Do you want more? More time, more balance, more love, more sex, more money, more real, and less bullshit? This is the Women Wanting More podcast with Dr. Karen Osborne. Real life, real stories, plus real tips to get you more of what you want.
So maybe, sister, you're living a life that doesn't belong to you. I was listening to an Oprah Super Soul Sunday podcast. Oh my gosh, if you don't listen to that podcast, listen to that podcast. The most amazing people, conversations that are on there. And it's like really varied, anywhere from pastors to other spiritual people to actors, musicians, authors. But she hit on Carolyn Myss, and Carolyn Myss, who's written a lot of spiritual books, if you will, had said this, and it really struck me. Of when people say that they feel lost or they don't know their purpose, right? Has that ever been you before, sister? You're like, I don't know my purpose. It's she kind of gave like steps on how to do that, right? But she's like, listen, it's not like you don't, sure you do. You just got to remember what that is again, but the thing is that when people are in that place where they go, I don't know, I feel lost, it's like, you know what, like, there's nothing to be found, there's nothing, you're not lost, you just simply got off track. And it's most likely the fact that you were, how did it go again? You were living the life, you're not living the life that was designed for you. Hold on. Recording this as I drive as I normally do. I'm going to pull over and look at my notes here for a second, because you're living a life that didn't belong to you, which is what I'm actually calling this podcast. You're living a life that didn't belong to you. And I was like, oh man, that's huge. That's huge. How common is it, and maybe this is true for you, sister, that a lot of us end up living our life based on what we think is expected of us. I remember when I was in practice as a chiropractor, at certainly the beginning of practice, it was like, I never talked about anything about myself, because it was like all about the patients, because that's not professional, not even just that, I'm not there for them, right? Had to dress a certain way, had to dress professional. And I remember having a colleague one point, Skyping, having a conversation with him, like, dude, are you in jeans? He's like, yeah. I'm like, you wear jeans in practice? He's like, yeah, I'm comfortable in them. Like, oh. And then it started to open up, and I began to wear jeans in practice every single day. But if we make choices, and sometimes it can even be, for some people, they do for some women, they go the whole path of like, okay, so they finish school, and then maybe they go to university, college, then they graduate, and they get married, and they start having babies, and they get the white picket fence and live happily ever after. And some are living this life, which is like, it wasn't the life that they were meant to live. And they feel very disjointed. They feel very out of alignment. Now, this can be different though, by the way, than saying like, oh, things aren't working in my marriage, so therefore I'm not designed for marriage. That's possible. But it's also possible you're just hitting painful things and haven't, realized yet that marriage is this beautiful experience for you to see things in each other and to grow together, that you're hopping out at the uncomfortable stage, right? Or the uncomfortable period of time that you're going through in your life right then. But maybe it's possible you're living a life that didn't belong to you. When I reflect right now on what I'm going through, and this, what I refer to as breakdown, breakthrough, spiritual awakening, I love when Brene Brown, I recently reread The Gifts of Imperfection. If you haven't read any Brene Brown, read all of them. Gifts of Imperfection is a great one to start. It was her second book. And she talks about how she had a breakdown, and it's really cute actually in the book. It's like she crosses over the word breakdown, and then next to it is spiritual awakening. So my spiritual awakening, that I take a look and I reflect on like what I've created with Women Wanting More. Like what started with this podcast back in August of 2015, which expanded into group coaching, one-on-one coaching first, then group coaching, then online programs, then live events, then like small event, live events to a larger event, to back to smaller ones, to like all of this, webinars, master classes, giving away free journals, all this stuff. And although I don't look back and I go, ooh, that was wrong, all this stuff, because I don't believe that it was, but I think what's happening is that I am changing. I'm expanding. I'm going through a shift with me right now. And so if I was to continue on running my business exactly the way that I've run it, I think the reason why I'm coming up against this, and that I've had all these things happening with me, injury, and like, hey, maybe you have a blood clot, had to spend the night in emergency on my birthday. Maybe it was around the time of my birthday, turning 49 years old. There was just a lot of things that started to kind of like happen to point me in the direction of like, listen, shit is not working. You're living this life right now that doesn't belong to you anymore. There's a different life for you. There's the next life or the next path or the next thing. And there's something else that she said as well too, which was it wasn't yours to live. It's not mine to live anymore in that same way. And I don't know what that means. I know that I'm continuing with the podcast. So don't worry, no jumping ship anytime soon. If anything, it's just going to be expanding the message, and what I'm speaking into is going to be expanding as I do, because this is what this podcast is, right? Which is experiences in my life, what I've learned from them, and what you can learn from them, and to understand that my story is your story. It's no different. I'm just making it a little bit more public and sharing it this way, right? Or maybe perhaps I've done some introspection and worked with coaches and mentors and studying and just digging really deep into what all this means and sharing with you what I've figured out, what I know to be true. But really, we're all the same. And it's the separateness that keeps us in this place of isolation, of thinking that we are the only ones, of believing that nobody's going to, nobody understands you, of creating this story of like, well, fuck everybody, because I've been hurt from people, so like, I'm just not going to go there anymore. I'm just going to do my thing. Fuck you, fuck them, fuck everybody. I've been there before too. Like, I get it, sister. I see you. I feel you. But sharing these things, and when it comes from a real place of like truth, with like, really, because like, as far as how is this conversation of spirituality related to business, and how's it relating to my coaching and live events, it's like, I have no clue. Like, really, I don't know. I do know that the more that I try to, quote, figure it out, I know I've used this word a couple times in the podcast, but I try to figure it out. Like, I go into my head and not in my heart. I step out of love and I go into a place of ego, which, by the way, when I use the term ego isn't like narcissism. It's like, no, that's not it. Ego is, there's essentially either two places you're going to be, either in ego or in love. Love you get, right? In the state of love. But ego is when you're a place of fear, guilt, embarrassment, shame, stress, anxiety, anger, overwhelm. You kind of get the point, right? So when I try to figure it out, I get to a point of like, I'm stressed out going, it's been a couple months. I've been like down this path. Like, why can't I figure shit out yet? Right? That's when I'm stepping into ego. And really, as human beings, we're designed to be in a state of love, not ego. Ego wants you to be separate. Ego will go, nobody gets you, so just keep your mouth quiet. Don't say anything. They're going to judge the shit out of you. Love says, share it all. Teach. Like, keep expanding. You're good. We got you. And so, yes, I don't know what this all means for women wanting more in this movement. I don't know what will be the next piece. I know that I'm still, again, speaking into this podcast, my phone 5 days a week. And I know that I still am honoring my commitment with the women inside the Sisterhood, the group coaching program that I run. And it's still there, and it might be expanding into something different too. I don't know yet. But I know that I was living a life that didn't belong to me anymore. Because I was changing. And so it needs to change. And I think when we resist this stuff is when we start to create all sorts of internal chaos within who we are. Because we try to hold on, right? We try to hold on to past stuff. Think of like maybe your first relationship. It was like high school. I remember like holding on to a high school boyfriend, him trying to break up with me. I think maybe a year and a half, 2 years in, I was like, no, don't leave me. And nobody will ever love me again. And that state that you're in as a teenager. And so we didn't break up, and then we stayed together. It was like 5.5 years. And then like, again, it was like, I wasn't accepting the fact that it wasn't working because I didn't know any better. It was my first relationship. All the crazy ideas you have as a young girl, but what that means, and when you first fall in love and what that means and how you define that. But it's like holding on to something that is just not working anymore. And that's really what was happening for me, not just with business, but with life. I'm like, well, things are changing. Like I don't know anymore. But I do know that what's happening now is not working for me. And I'm more clear on it from hearing these words today from Carolyn Miss, which is like, I'm not living a life that belongs to me anymore. And for some of you, that might even have a deeper meaning, a deeper feeling. You might be living a life, and you have been for a long time, which doesn't belong to you. It's not your life. It's just the life that you think that you're supposed to be living and how you're showing up. So here's your more tip for today. Take out your journal and write at the top this. This question, here's what you're going to write down. Am I living a life that doesn't belong to me? Am I living a life that doesn't belong to me? And just start writing and really see what comes up. Listen, this is a process. This is not like, I did that thing and I realized, this doesn't belong to me. And so, okay, great. Where do I go now? Like, this is not the path that is like A to B and then you're done. Like, it's a process, so be okay with that. This is an opening. Don't be afraid of it. I know that you are. It's okay. It's simply a journal entry. It's a conversation with yourself. Look how much that you spend like researching like stuff for your kids and maybe schools and like vacation spots and like all this kind of stuff. And it's like, how about you take that same amount of time and you actually invest it back in you and figuring out you and finding out you and discovering you and investing in you. So top of the journal page to write, am I living a life that belongs to me? And start writing and see what surfaces. So sister, one thing finishing, actually 2 things I'm going to actually have you do. Number 1, make sure to subscribe to this podcast, because if you don't already do that, it's really awesome, because that way you're going to get notifications on your phone of when there's a new episode and you won't miss any. I consume all my podcasts on my phone. You most likely do too. And so this is the way that you get notifications and you won't miss, and you're going to see all 5 episodes that come out Monday to Friday right there on your phone. So subscribe. And if this podcast means something to you, I'm going to ask you to leave a review. Let me know what you think. Now, just so you know, I'm not reading any more reviews. There's definitely some ones out there that are full of hate. And that's okay. That's what people believe to be true for them. I respect and honor that. But I can't be in that space and read through them. So if you do it and I don't respond to you, just know that I still thank you and I appreciate that. So leave a review. And then the next thing is make sure to receive the newsletter, the Women Wanting More newsletter, because that's where this is where I'm going to actually be dropping of like, okay, what's happening with the book I'm writing and what's happening with coaching and maybe live events, like what is all coming into play. And in addition, you get the podcast delivered that way as well through the newsletter and all the show notes. So if you're hearing me mention stuff, you're like, what was that thing that she mentioned? You can just click clickable links, right? So you can have that with the show notes. And the newsletter comes out daily. So head over right now to drkarenosborn.com/action guide. And I'm going to send you some cool video trainings at the same time. So I'll talk to you in the next episode, sister. A life of more. It's just one step away from you doing the real, honest, deep work every single day. I love and appreciate you.
To get the show notes of each Women Wanting More episode, including the How to Get More tip, subscribe to the newsletter at drkarenosborn.com/newsletter.